What if I told you that confidence, the very quality you've been taught to cultivate, can be the most dangerous weapon a man carries, and the very reason he is destroyed? The world has seduced you into believing that confidence is strength, that standing tall and announcing yourself is the mark of power. But look deeper. The man who parades his confidence too loudly reveals the size of his hunger, and hunger makes him predictable. What you think is authority often becomes a roadmap for your enemies, each bold proclamation a signal flare that tells them exactly where to strike. In the courts of power, the man who flaunts his confidence is not respected, he is studied, and the moment fortune turns, that confidence becomes evidence against him, his own boldness transformed into the rope by which he is hanged. Consider this reversal. Real power thrives in contradiction. The most formidable men often cloak their certainty in restraint, letting silence confuse those who search for weakness. To appear too confident is to expose a wound, because the confident man must continuously prove it, and in proving it he bleeds. The quiet strategist, however, speaks rarely, and when he does, his words carry the weight of prophecy. Confidence is seductive because it promises liberation from fear, but in truth it binds you to fear's shadow. The man who must appear confident at all times becomes a slave to appearances. As Machiavelli observed, everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. A ruler who is too eager to project his strength teaches others where to test it. History confirms this cold law. Agathocles of Syracuse displayed reckless confidence in a staged meeting, inviting the city's elite to dine with him, only to massacre them all. His confidence secured power, yes, but it also marked him with infamy so deep that even centuries later, he is remembered not as a ruler, but as a butcher. Cesare Borgia, too, was admired for his boldness, his seeming fearlessness, yet he understood that confidence must be tempered with cunning. He used Ramiro de Orco to unleash cruelty on the Romagna, then executed him in the town square to win back the people's trust. Confidence without calculation would have made him despised. His mastery lay in disguising bold cruelty with theatrical justice. You see the pattern. Confidence itself is not enough. Naked confidence is brittle. Only when laced with cold psychology does it become dangerous to others rather than fatal to oneself. The modern man misunderstands this entirely. He is told to fake it till he makes it, to inflate his chest, to project confidence as though it were a shield. But this false projection is no shield, it is a painted mask, and masks crack under pressure. A truly dangerous man does not need to fake anything, for his confidence is not in how he appears, but in what he withholds. He is unreadable, and in his silence others imagine storms. Ask yourself, who is more unsettling? The man who loudly proclaims he is fearless, or the man who meets your eyes without a word, giving you nothing, forcing you to imagine the depths of his thoughts? Confidence that announces itself is theater. Confidence that conceals itself is terror. Confidence becomes dangerous when it is stripped of vanity and fused with calculation. Imagine a lion crouched in tall grass, invisible to its prey. It does not roar before the strike, for roaring would betray the hunt. Yet it is supremely confident in its kill. This is the difference between raw confidence and Machiavellian confidence. One is loud, insecure, desperate for validation. The other is silent, measured, and devastating. True power is not found in proving yourself, but in needing no proof. The wolf that stalks the herd does not ask for applause. He moves in silence, strikes once, and disappears into shadow, leaving fear to ripple endlessly behind him. This is why so many men collapse when fortune shifts. Their confidence was never rooted in strategy. It was a performance dependent on applause. Remove the applause, and they unravel. Kings fall this way, generals collapse this way. Entrepreneurs, lovers, rulers, any man who ties his confidence to external recognition is already lost. Because the crowd that cheers today will whisper tomorrow, and when they whisper, the confident man feels his armor shatter. He was never truly armored, only dressed for the stage. The strategist, however, the one who understands the cold psychology of restraint, remains untouched. His confidence is invisible because it is real, and what is real does not need to shout. So understand this. Confidence is not about display. It is about leverage. It is not about being seen. It is about being felt. Dangerous confidence is the kind that disorients others precisely because it denies them clarity. It is the uncertainty of the silent general, the calm of the negotiator who reveals nothing, the serenity of the man who knows he can walk away. To live with this kind of confidence is to weaponize absence, to make others fear what they cannot measure. This is the essence of Machiavellian psychology, to turn even your silence into a weapon, to let others tremble not at your words, but at the void you leave where words should be. They will tell you confidence is magnetic, that it draws people to you like moths to a flame. But do you know what else a flame draws? Insects, scavengers, and predators, who wait for the fire to burn out. The more visible your confidence, the more eyes you attract, and eyes are the beginning of envy. Envy corrodes alliances, it sharpens daggers, it transforms admiration into the quiet plotting of those who once smiled at you. This is the cold psychology of confidence. It breeds not only followers but rivals. Every man who projects himself as untouchable invites the world to test him. Every king who appears too secure gives his subjects cause to imagine life without him. Confidence creates enemies as swiftly as it creates admirers, and the greater the spectacle, the sharper the knives it inspires. Think of Ferdinand of Spain, who understood this balance well. He waged religious wars not merely to display his boldness, but to bind his people's emotions to the cause, disguising his ambition under the cloak of piety. If he had displayed confidence without narrative, he would have been branded a tyrant. But he clothed his ambition in the language of God, making his confidence untouchable by critics. Contrast this with Oliverotto da Fermo, who strutted in his newfound authority after murdering his rivals at a banquet. His confidence was naked, and because it lacked disguise, it became his downfall. His boldness made him a marked man, destroyed by those who saw through his crude spectacle. Here lies the distinction. Confidence is safe only when hidden inside a greater mask. When it stands alone, it is a challenge to the world, and the world never ignores a challenge. Why is this so? Because human beings are not drawn to confidence itself, but to the illusion of stability it creates. People are fickle, ungrateful, liars, and deceivers. They do not love confidence, they exploit it. They will cheer your confidence when it benefits them, but abandon you when it threatens their interests. Love is preserved by obligation, and obligations break easily. Fear, on the other hand, does not require loyalty. It demands compliance. This is why confidence must be alloyed with fear to become dangerous. A ruler who relies only on confidence courts disaster. A ruler who mixes it with fear commands permanence. He creates the impression that his confidence is not a performance, but an unshakable reality, reinforced by consequences. Imagine a gladiator in the arena. The crowd roars for the man who struts proudly, basking in their adoration. But the crowd's love cannot deflect the sword aimed at his heart. The silent, cold-eyed gladiator who wastes no gesture, who betrays no emotion, that is the one his opponent fears. Not because of what he says, but because of what remains hidden. Confidence that is displayed invites testing. Confidence that is concealed creates terror. The difference is not in the strength of the fighter, but in the psychology of the observer. The man who reveals nothing forces others to fight their own imagination, and imagination is the deadliest opponent of all. Understand this well. Modern men confuse confidence with bravado. They believe that to speak loudly, to boast of their plans, to flaunt their achievements, is to command respect. Yet every boast creates a debt. The moment you declare what you will do, you hand your enemies the outline of your strategy. The moment you flaunt what you have achieved, you give the envious a target. The man who must constantly display confidence is no different from a gambler announcing his every move at the table. He entertains the crowd, but ensures his ruin. A true strategist lets his results speak only when they can no longer be challenged. Until then, he cloaks his ambition, his progress, his strength in ambiguity. This is why restraint is not weakness. It is the purest form of dominance. When you resist the urge to display confidence, you deny others the satisfaction of knowing your position. They are forced to fill the silence with their own fears. They suspect that your quiet means strength. They imagine that your calm conceals overwhelming resources, and because imagination is limitless, they will always overestimate you. Dangerous confidence is not about being the loudest in the room. It is about making the room quieter in your presence. It is about bending the thoughts of others without revealing your hand. It is about turning your very absence of display into a mirror, forcing others to see their own insecurity reflected back at them. Confidence, then, is not dangerous because it exists. It is dangerous when it becomes invisible, when it seeps beneath appearances, when it no longer needs applause, when it radiates from a man who withholds more than he reveals. That is the confidence that unsettles rulers, disrupts enemies, and dismantles allies without a word. That is the confidence that does not perform but distorts. And that, above all, is the kind that leaves men whispering long after you've left the room, uncertain whether they have just glimpsed a man or a force. Confidence becomes most perilous when it is mistaken for invincibility. A man intoxicated with his own aura begins to forget that fortune shifts like a river, calm one day and raging the next. He imagines himself the master of the current, yet it takes only one storm to reveal he was drifting all along. The Romans knew this truth well, for they did not trust fortune blindly. They intervened early, established colonies, armed their citizens, and ensured that confidence was never mere bravado, but rooted in preparation. The man who relies on confidence alone is like a city with high walls but empty granaries, impressive until the siege begins. When the enemy cuts supply, the walls mean nothing, and the people who once admired the strength of their ruler will turn to curses as their hunger grows. This is why appearances must never be confused with essence. Men judge more with their eyes than with their hands, which is why appearances are necessary tools, but they must not become your prison. A prince must appear confident, appear virtuous, appear secure, but he must be ready at any moment to act viciously, cruelly, or deceptively if necessity demands it. Confidence that cannot bend is not confidence at all. It is vanity, and vanity is fragile. Recall Pope Alexander VI, who projected the image of a pious leader while manipulating alliances to carve out territories for his son Caesar. His confidence was never naked. It was clothed in the appearance of divine authority, even as his hands orchestrated ruthless maneuvers behind closed doors. It was this duality, the fox and the lion, that preserved him. Appearances to charm, reality to dominate. Look closer at the psychology beneath this. Humans do not seek truth, they seek reassurance. They are drawn to the confident because he seems certain in a world that terrifies them with its chaos. But reassurance is fickle. The moment the confident man falters, they abandon him without hesitation. People are ungrateful, liars, deceivers, greedy for gain, shunning danger, yet quick to demand courage from others. This is why Machiavelli wrote that love is preserved by obligation, which can be broken, but fear is maintained by the dread of punishment, which never fails. Confidence without fear is unstable because it relies on the goodwill of men who will sell you out the instant misfortune touches you. Only when confidence carries the shadow of consequence does it become enduring. Consider the battlefield again. A general who rallies his soldiers with bold declarations is useful, but if those words are not backed by discipline, punishment, and ruthless order, his confidence will collapse at the first sign of retreat. Soldiers do not fear losing confidence. They fear the lash, the sword, the shame of abandonment. The general who blends confidence with dread is unbreakable because his men march not for applause but for survival. This is what so many modern men miss. Confidence is not about inspiring comfort, it is about inspiring control. It is not about charm, it is about command. The cold psychology of confidence is not in how it makes others adore you, but in how it makes them obey. Now imagine the opposite. The man who must constantly reassure himself with external applause. He posts his every achievement, brags about every gain, declares his plans before they ripen. He is not strong, he is starving. His confidence is not a fortress, it is scaffolding, shaky and temporary, collapsing the moment the crowd looks away. Worse still, he teaches his enemies how to dismantle him. They know what he wants because he announces it. They know what he fears because he avoids it. They know where to strike because he cannot resist exposing the very places he believes himself untouchable. The crowd may cheer him, but the strategist studies him, and when the blow comes, it will not be resisted. Confidence becomes dangerous not by volume but by silence. The most unsettling man is not the one who tells you how great he is, but the one who withholds what you crave to know. He denies you the comfort of certainty, and in its place he leaves you with imagination. And because imagination magnifies, he becomes larger than life in your mind. This is why restraint is power. This is why confidence, when stripped of performance, transforms into fear. The unreadable man is always the most feared, because no one knows where his confidence ends and where his danger begins. So here is the paradox. Confidence must be displayed, but only as a mask. Behind it must live calculation, discipline, cruelty if necessary. To wear confidence as a costume is to die by it. To use it as a tool is to weaponize perception itself. Dangerous confidence is never about convincing the world of who you are. It is about forcing the world to believe what it cannot prove, to tremble at the possibility that your silence hides something greater than their courage. The danger of confidence lies not in its presence, but in its intoxication. A man who begins to believe his own projection is already undone. Confidence is a mask you wear for others, never a drug you swallow yourself. Once you inhale the smoke of your own performance, you blind yourself to reality. This is the silent collapse of so many leaders who seemed invincible until the ground shifted beneath their feet. They mistook applause for permanence, perception for essence, loyalty for love, and when necessity came knocking, they discovered that the very confidence which once lifted them high had also tied them to a ledge with no rope. The world does not forgive a man who forgets that his image is only a weapon, not his identity. Look at the tyrants who fell because they believed their own theater. Nero projected godlike confidence, drowning in excess, basking in admiration, until Rome burned and the people turned. He thought himself adored. In truth, he was despised. Stalin, though ruthless, understood the mask better. He did not trust in his confidence. He engineered loyalty through fear, propaganda, and silence. He crafted illusions that could not be pierced, and in that ambiguity, he preserved his throne while purging millions. It was not confidence that kept him alive, it was terror. Confidence decorated him, but fear armed him. Every ruler who lasts learns this distinction. The man who clings only to confidence will be remembered for his ruin, not his reign. Confidence without calculation is the most seductive of traps. It tells a man he is ready when he is not. It tells him he has allies when he has only opportunists. It tells him he is loved when he is merely tolerated. How many kings thought themselves adored by their people, only to be abandoned the moment famine struck? How many generals believed their soldiers unshakably loyal, only to find them deserting at the first sign of defeat? Confidence cannot survive necessity. Necessity is the great executioner, and it always reveals whether a man was standing on stone or sand. The man who mistakes confidence for invulnerability becomes a slave to it, unable to retreat, unable to adapt, bound to die defending the illusion of strength he created. This is why confidence must be treated as a weapon, not as armor. Armor shields you, but it is heavy and inflexible. A weapon, however, is chosen, wielded, and set aside at will. The wise ruler wears confidence like a sword. He draws it when needed, displays it to intimidate, and sheathes it before it becomes a liability. The unwise ruler wears confidence like a crown, forgetting that crowns attract envy, that crowns can be torn away, that crowns make the head heavy. The crown wearer becomes a target, the sword bearer becomes a threat. Dangerous confidence, then, is never constant. It is selective. It appears when it must, vanishes when it serves better, and always remains under control. Picture a wolf at the edge of a fire. It watches silently, eyes glinting in the dark. The fire gives warmth to the men gathered. It gives them confidence in their safety. They laugh louder, shout bolder, believing the flame will protect them. But the wolf does not test the fire. It waits for the wind, for the embers to weaken, for one careless move. The wolf does not mistake the fire's glow for true strength. Confidence is fire. It warms, it dazzles, it attracts. But it also burns out, and when it does, the wolf claims everything. To be dangerous is to be the wolf, not the fire. It is to let others be intoxicated by their glow while you sharpen your teeth in the dark. The cold psychology of confidence is this: it must never become your foundation, only your instrument. If you rely on it to define you, you have already surrendered your power to the audience who judges it. If you wield it sparingly, however, you become unpredictable, unreadable, and terrifying. Men will fear you not because of the confidence you display, but because of the abyss you conceal. They will sense that your restraint hides more than their courage can endure, and that uncertainty will break them before your hand even moves. Confidence does not win battles, but the fear born from calculated confidence, deliberate, silent, and cold, has ended empires without a blade being drawn. The most chilling truth about confidence is that it is both a beacon and a trap. Displayed too brightly, it lures not only admirers but also assassins. Every declaration of certainty plants the idea of resistance in the minds of those who envy you. The louder you proclaim your dominance, the more energy your rivals gather in secret, plotting not if they should move against you but when. This is why confidence becomes dangerous, not in its presence, but in its exposure. To be seen as too secure is to tempt those who live for the chance to disrupt it. To be seen as invulnerable is to awaken every man who dreams of being the one to prove otherwise. The strategist understands that confidence must therefore be distributed like poison, given in small doses, never enough for others to study, always enough to unsettle. Machiavelli warned that it is much safer to be feared than loved, for fear is a weapon that does not change when the winds of fortune shift. Confidence without fear is fragile theater. Confidence laced with fear is iron. Think of Cesare Borgia again. His enemies admired his boldness, but it was the shadow of cruelty that secured their obedience. His execution of Romero de Orco was not simply an act of justice, it was a display that reminded all of Romagna that Cesare's confidence was not bravado but command, backed by violence. The people believed in him not because he was confident, but because they knew confidence alone was not what held their lives in his hands. They understood that behind the mask was a man who would crush without hesitation. That is the alchemy of dangerous confidence, the union of assurance with terror. This truth is not confined to princes of the past. In every negotiation, in every relationship, in every arena of modern life, men sabotage themselves by oversharing their certainty. They brag about deals before they are signed. They expose their ambitions before they are fortified. They broadcast their strength before it is secure. What they believe will intimidate others only invites challenge. The cold psychology of power is this: never show your hand until the trap is already sprung. Confidence is a signal, and signals can be intercepted. The quieter man, the one who withholds, the one who refuses to let others read him, that is the man who destabilizes opponents. His confidence does not declare itself. It is felt like pressure in the air, invisible but suffocating. Imagine a throne room. Two envoys stand before a ruler. One speaks at length, boasting of his king's power, reciting armies, wealth, and alliances. The other remains silent, his eyes steady, revealing nothing. Which one unsettles you more? The talker gives you information to exploit. The silent one leaves you with imagination, and imagination always invents dangers greater than reality. This is the mathematics of psychological warfare. Silence multiplies fear, and fear multiplies power. The confident man who speaks too much reduces himself. The confident man who says little expands in the minds of others until he becomes monstrous, larger than his true form. He weaponizes uncertainty, and in uncertainty, men break themselves. The masses too are more easily governed when a ruler's confidence is veiled in mystique. A prince who struts endlessly inspires jealousy. A prince who hides his hand while maintaining calm inspires awe. People want stability more than they want truth, and when they cannot measure the depth of their leader's strength, they project stability upon him. This is why appearances matter more than reality, yet appearances must remain incomplete. Give them enough confidence to believe you are unshaken, but never enough to know why. Let them trust the mask, but never glimpse the face beneath it, for the face can age, falter, or be destroyed. The mask can be remade endlessly. This is the coldest application of confidence, to turn it into an atmosphere rather than an act. When you no longer need to announce yourself, when your presence alone shifts the air in the room, when silence unsettles more than speeches, you have moved beyond confidence into dominion. This is why the truly dangerous man rarely appears dangerous at all. He denies you the performance. He denies you the weakness of knowing. He leaves you stranded in uncertainty, and in that uncertainty, you collapse under the weight of your own mind. His confidence is not shown, it is imposed, it is not claimed, it is felt, and that makes it more lethal than any sword. Confidence becomes fatal when it crosses the thin line into arrogance. Arrogance is confidence divorced from strategy, swollen by ego and deaf to necessity. The arrogant man stops listening, stops adapting, stops fearing what should be feared. He treats fortune as his servant rather than as the storm it is, and so when the flood arrives, he is the first to drown. Machiavelli warned that fortune is like a river, wild, destructive, devastating when unprepared for. The wise ruler builds dikes and levees in times of calm. The arrogant one builds palaces on the riverbank and then curses the heavens when his house is swept away. Confidence without humility before necessity is not power, it is suicide dressed in pride. This is why the most formidable leaders are paradoxes, outwardly serene, inwardly vigilant. They project calm, but beneath it lies a restless calculation, a ceaseless anticipation of threats, a readiness to act with cruelty if the moment demands it. They know that confidence is not a permanent condition, but a stage mask worn to keep the crowd under control. When the mask cracks, they discard it without hesitation, replacing it with silence, with fear, with deception, with whatever keeps power intact. The arrogant man cannot discard his mask, for he has come to believe it is his true face. The dangerous man knows it is only paint, and paint can be redrawn at will. Think of Agathocles of Syracuse, who mistook boldness for invulnerability. His confidence was overwhelming, but it was also reckless. He secured power through blood, yes, but he left himself with no path to legitimacy, no bridge to admiration. He could terrify, but he could not endure. His story is not one of triumph, but of infamy. His confidence remembered not as a weapon, but as a stain. Contrast this with the Roman Republic, which cloaked its confidence in institutions, laws, and spectacle. It projected certainty to its citizens and to its enemies, but beneath that surface lay brutal enforcement, swift punishment, and cold pragmatism. Rome's confidence was not arrogance, it was theater supported by steel. The psychology behind this is simple. Men are not broken by what they see. They are broken by what they cannot see. Confidence that screams its certainty breeds resistance, because it gives the fearful something tangible to fight. Confidence that hides in restraint breeds despair, because it denies the fearful anything to hold on to. A man who must constantly assert himself becomes a target, because his noise irritates even those who once admired him. But the man who rarely speaks, who reveals little, who leaves room for dread, he becomes a shadow on the wall, larger than life, beyond confrontation. People may cheer confidence, but they submit to mystery. This is why in every field of power, the quiet man outlasts the loud one. In business, the founder who flaunts his confidence invites the market to prove him wrong. In war, the general who boasts of his victory invites the enemy to cut off his supply lines. In relationships, the man who must prove his confidence chases validation until he is drained of dignity. But the man who withholds, who lets results speak only after they are irreversible, who treats confidence as a tool rather than a personality, this man unsettles everyone around him. They wonder what he is hiding, and in that wondering, they weaken themselves. Confidence then becomes dangerous, not when it is constant, but when it is unpredictable, like a storm that rolls silently across the horizon, striking only when the ground is unprepared. It terrifies not because of its noise, but because of its timing. To master confidence is to learn to disappear it at will, to let absence amplify its power. To be unriddable is to be untouchable. This is the true weapon of the Machiavellian ruler, to turn confidence into a ghost, haunting others more by its withholding than by its display. He becomes a mirror, in which others see only their own fear. He becomes a silence that no one dares to break. Confidence is not a throne to sit upon. It is a dagger to be concealed, revealed only when the strike is certain. The moment you treat it as a throne, you paint a target on your back. But the moment you sheath it as a weapon, you force others to wonder when and how you will use it. That is the essence of dangerous confidence, not in being seen, but in being suspected, not in performance, but in precision, not in noise, but in silence that crushes louder than any voice. The most lethal form of confidence is the kind that never announces itself, yet permeates everything. It is not the roar of the lion, but the quiet certainty in his eyes before he strikes. It is not the emperor's decree shouted in the square, but the silence in the hall before his word is spoken. Dangerous confidence is not a costume to be worn. It is an atmosphere imposed upon others. Those who enter your presence feel it before you speak. They hesitate, they second guess, they censor themselves, because your restraint unsettles them more than any boast could. This is why confidence, when coldly applied, becomes psychological warfare. It denies others clarity, it denies them comfort, it forces them to wrestle with their own doubts until they undo themselves. This is the mirror effect. When you reveal nothing, others project everything. They imagine depths that may not exist. They invent dangers that may not be real. They weaken themselves by fighting shadows. This is the power of unreadability. A prince who appears confident but unpredictable compels respect, because no one dares to test what they cannot measure. He seems to be everywhere even when absent, invincible even when vulnerable, eternal even when mortal. The man who radiates quiet certainty becomes an enigma, and enigmas always command more power than spectacles. For what is feared most in human nature is not what is known, but what cannot be known. Think of the wolf again, watching from the tree line. The villagers comfort themselves with firelight, with chatter, with laughter. They declare themselves safe, they boast of their strength, but the wolf does not move. He waits. His confidence is not displayed, it is weaponized through patience. And when the fire burns low, when exhaustion sets in, he enters the circle without a sound. That is the essence of Machiavellian confidence, timed, hidden, decisive. The wolf does not seek validation, and so he is never betrayed by it. He does not mistake noise for power, and so his silence is unbreakable. He does not waste confidence, he spends it only where it buys terror. This is the final inversion. Confidence is not about you, it is about them. Your goal is not to feel confident, but to make others uncertain. Your aim is not to announce your strength, but to impose silence upon their courage. The man who understands this becomes dangerous, not because of what he is, but because of what he makes others become in his presence. Hesitant, doubtful, weak. His confidence is a cold mirror that exposes the trembling of everyone around him, and in that trembling, he rules. So the lesson is ruthless. Do not chase confidence as an identity. Do not display it as a constant. Do not swallow it as a drug. Instead, wield it as a blade. Sheath it in silence. Polish it with restraint, and strike only when necessity commands. Appear confident when appearances serve you. Withdraw it when envy swells. Conceal it when enemies search for openings, and unleash it only when the result is already inevitable. In this way, confidence ceases to be a performance and becomes a weapon of sovereignty. This is the cold psychology that makes confidence dangerous. Not the shallow bravado of men desperate to be admired, but the strategic aura of men who no longer need admiration. It is the confidence that is invisible until it suffocates you. The confidence that does not roar but whispers. The confidence that terrifies because it is beyond control. And when you master this, when your silence becomes more unsettling than another man's speech, when your restraint becomes more persuasive than another man's boasting, you will no longer merely appear powerful. You will be power itself. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being you? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments, I choose my peace. Let's see how many here are truly ready for this transition. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready for this new path. A part of you has already understood that being loved means nothing if it requires abandoning yourself. True self-love begins the moment you choose yourself, even if it costs you being alone for a while.